Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 185. It is a Euros edition. The Euros are underway. We're certainly going to talk a little bit of Euros as the pod goes along, but some Spurs news to get to before that. We've got a nearly full house on this Sunday evening here in the States. We'll start by throwing it out to Scott. He is at Scott G. Bird. Enjoying a little bit of sunshine on this evening. Scott, what's going on, my friend?
Chilling, man. I'm down in the Rio Grande Valley with my parents for a couple weeks, and it's a little noisy, so I apologize. But it's just too nice to go inside when you've lived in Seattle for the last 5 years, and you just have some epic sunshine and a little bit of heat. So bear with me, listeners, as I talk. But good to be here, Andrew.
Yes, that is Texas for our international listeners who don't know what the hell the Rio Grande Valley is. That is in Texas, where we also find in a different part of Texas, Caroline. She is also with us at CG Stefco. Kaz, you are indoors. It's probably a little too hot for you to be sitting outside, just like it is for me here in Arizona. But how are you on this evening?
Yeah, I don't know how Scott is outside because he's like, 3 hours south of me, and I can only imagine it's hotter down there. So yeah, I'm enjoying the air conditioning. I was outside for a long time yesterday, so I don't need to be outdoors.
Yeah, I hear you. I've been hiding inside all weekend. It's been like well over 100 degrees here in Arizona, and I am already. It's only mid-June, and I'm already sick of the summer. But that's a topic for another day. We also have the triumphant return of Mr. TC. Todd Kasho at TC_Kasho is here after a few weeks away. Todd, what is up, my friend?
Well, any day that you get the opportunity to get together with your mates and chat some football and some Spurs specifically is a good fucking day. I missed you all terribly, and I'm very happy to be back. Wild things have been going on in the world since my last time with y'all, so I'm excited to do a little catching up and talk about this fun tournament season we've got in front of us.
Yeah, it's a busy time in sports. I mean, not just with the international tournaments, but I just wrapped up watching the U.S. Open in golf, and there's plenty of baseball going on. I know cricket has been in the news in the last few weeks, weirdly enough, here in the States, because
Cricket World Cup.
The U.S. is somehow making progress in cricket now. It's just, we've got NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And yet the Spurs news just continues to trickle in. So we will discuss some of that. And let's kind of kick it off there. The real big, I guess, number one headline with a bullet this week is the official announcement of another departure. We talked a lot about departures last season. I declared last week clear out season on both the men's and women's side, but this week we got, I think, and I'm going to make this joke and not mean it in a harsh way, but the biggest piece from the summer departure list is leaving us in Tanguy Ndombele. And the club has announced that they will terminate the contract with the midfielder with 1 year remaining on the deal. It is a total of 3 seasons with Spurs and 63 Premier League appearances for Tanguy Ndombele, 5 goals and 6 assists over that time span. I guess let's start with this, Scott. What are you going to remember most about the Tanguy Ndombele era at Spurs?
I mean, honestly, there's not much to remember, unfortunately. It is the definition of a lack of return on investment. Probably just how hyped I was when we signed him, which tells me how much I know about football. But I was jazzed when we brought him in. I really thought that he was going to be the missing piece in the Pochettino machine. And Pochettino leaving, of course, factors into this conversation we're having, and then the subsequent spin of managers from there. Right, didn't treat him well by any means, but unfortunately with Tanguy, if you look at the string of moves that he's made on loan, no one's interested in his services permanently, right? And neither are Spurs. So I wish him the best, and we'll see what happens. But unfortunately, not a whole lot to remember here at Tottenham to answer your question.
Caroline, do you have any positivity to shed on the Tanguy situation, or is this just going to be one of those chalk it up, kind of like Scott said? You just chalk this one up as a massive L for Spurs.
I think his farewell message on Instagram was surprisingly heartfelt and nice. Because I wouldn't blame him for being disgruntled about how it all, went down in the end. But I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna have a ton of memories of him long term, and it's too bad it didn't work out. But he clearly was not the player that we thought we were getting. Nor was he the player that many of the loan teams thought they were getting. So I don't know what his next step is going to be, but you have to imagine it's going to be a step down.
You would indeed think so. Yeah, the Instagram message, for those who didn't see it: end of my adventure in the best club in London. I learned a lot during my time at Tottenham. Thank you for the unwavering support of the supporters. I wish you all the best for the future and know you will be extremely successful. TC, your reaction to Ndombele's departure?
This is pretty. I mean, honestly, it's a pretty momentous occasion. I think that in the time that we've all been following Spurs, this is easily the biggest bust that we've had in the transfer market. And when he's still to this day the most expensive transfer that we've ever made at this club. And when you have a gun-shy owner like Daniel Levy, and then he actually pulls the trigger, and it's on this guy that's the jewel of everyone's eye, and then that guy comes in and has all the talent in the whole wide world, but then regularly shits the bed at about minute 60. It makes it tough for a guy like Daniel Levy to look back and go, well, then there's no possible way that I can go and get the highest price guy. I've got to take a different approach. And I think because of that, because of the experience that we had with Tanguy Ndombele, it's entirely reshaped the way that Daniel Levy looks at transfers, who he's brought in to help restructure the football department at Spurs and help put a team on the field that's built from the youth department up, so that we're actually, when we're bringing in as value as opposed to top name quality. On the Tanguy Ndombele side, I don't think that guy should be anything other than entirely fucking grateful. Tottenham Hotspur gave him generational wealth and then loaned his happy ass to two clubs that would be grateful to let him sit on the bench for the majority of the time that they went and won domestic silverware. So I don't want to hear a goddamn word about Tanguy Ndombele's sob story about, oh, this guy didn't pan out, this, that, and the other thing. Tanguy Ndombele came to London. He showed flashes of true brilliance to the point where Gareth Bale came out and said, I was shocked at how this guy operates. And you asked what the lasting impression of Tanguy Ndombele is. I have two of them. The first one is the turn job that he did against Southampton, where he turned three guys inside out, took 2 steps forward, and find Son breaking through the back line to finish off that game. That's the first one. And the second one is, and it perfectly describes the polarity of Tanguy Ndombele's time at Tottenham, and that's him walking off the pitch in that FA Cup match. So thank you, Tanguy Ndombele, for the brilliance that you showed, but also fuck you, Tanguy Ndombele, for ruining my hopes of you being a generational talent for Tottenham. And I think that's where we're at, Andrew, and we just chalk it up and keep it moving.
Yeah. I think that's all really well said, Todd. I think especially the piece about how much impact this made on Levy. But I just don't really care about those individual flashes, like a sweet turn and, picking a wonderful pass out a couple of times. And I'm just speaking hypothetically now, but I wanted somebody who was going to come in and really make the midfield tick and turn right. And he should have been that person. So I'm not scolding him. Like you said, he went and won 2 trophies with Napoli and then Galatasaray this season. So and he secured the bag, as we now say. So what
he's going to go back to France.
100%.
Yeah, Scotty, he's going to go back to France. And he's going to hang out at like Saint Etienne or whatever the hell mid-table French club, and he's going to make half of his wages, and he's going to be fat, dumb, and happy, turning 19-year-old French boys for the rest of his life and not caring.
No doubt, man. Tanguy Ndombele will be fine, but the impact that he left at Spurs will be, deeper than just what takes place on the field, as you said. I also think some of Tanguy not panning out also led in some ways to the rash managerial decisions, I think, at times, right? And not Tanguy specifically, but our lack of signings for 3 windows or whatever it was. I can never get that number right, but it was way too long of a string of windows without a signing, coupled with throwing money at Tanguy, Gio Soso, and Ryan Sessegnon, sacking Pochettino again. Maybe because of what he wasn't getting out of all that money Levy spent, right? And then a couple big name managers to try to squeeze some sort of return on investment out of the poor decisions you'd made, right? So I really think not Tanguy himself, but that whole episode from a transfer perspective really dominoed, I think, for the next 3 or 4 years as well.
Yeah.
It's been over 2 years since Tanguy has made an appearance for Spurs. It was, as you mentioned, in that cup defeat where he kind of sauntered off, and that was January of 2022.
There was
I
no
do think
sulked.
Yes, I don't know why I said sauntered. Sulked is the word I definitely meant to use. I do think the grander point is like this is a Band-Aid that needed to be ripped off, and it's one of those where you rip it off and you look at the scab and you realize, oh, that does kind of look healed. Like that does, like the wounds of so many windows going by and so many managers passing through it that does feel like it's something that has healed now. And as
do you know why?
I'm not, well, because it's almost been
simple.
forced. It's almost been forced upon the club.
Mickey Van de Ven is gorgeous. That's why you don't give a fuck anymore.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated for me than that, Todd. It's
really not
that,
though. The partnership that he has with Romero, the way that we bounce back from all those things, the fact that we lost the greatest striker in the history of the Premier League, and we still finished 5th. And the beginning part of the season, we didn't miss a beat. Like Madison comes in and says some cheeky shit about filling Harry Kane's number 10, and then backs it up with his play on the field to start the season. Like the thing is that like we were able over the course of the last 2 windows to change the face of this club from some shambolic nonsense that featured Davinson Sanchez's of the world. Right? Think about how long ago that was. It really wasn't that long ago, but that name feels like an eternity ago because Mickey Van de Ven is a beautiful human being.
Well, but I think it even speaks to the fact that the chairman, who is much maligned by many, does see the errors of his ways. And it's something we've kind of been talking about for a while now, in that since hiring Ange Postecoglou, yes, that's a good thing. And like it's not only that, but implementing this new system of recruitment and, dealing with transfer windows and syncing it up with what the manager wants rather than bringing in Jed Spence as a club signing. It's like those kinds of moves I don't see being made in the near future. Now, if they are, we'll have the criticism that we deserve to have for them. But this kind of move felt like, all right, here's our win now move, just like hiring Mourinho or Conte did. And this is not a club that can afford. Well, let me rephrase that. This is a club that can afford to do this, to terminate a contract early.
Did you see Pink upside down in the motherfucking stadium this week? Get out of here. We can afford whatever we want to.
That's kind of what I mean. And this, and I think that's the other part of this that we don't really discuss enough, is that we talk about Tottenham being a quote unquote big club all the time. Well, this is the kind of move that big clubs make. They recognize their mistakes and they do rip that Band-Aid off and just wash their hands of them because they can afford to. That's what being a big club in this day and age in football is about. It's about recognizing when you fucked up and deciding, we're not going to compound this mistake by making 3 or 4 more of them. We're just going to get rid of this mistake and move on. And that's the biggest part of this for me, Caroline.
Yeah, exactly. I think that right now we're doing a much better job of making transfer moves and even the managerial move that are aimed towards like incremental progress and sustainable progress. Not, like you said, trying to have that like quick, win now, miracle transfer that we know hardly ever exists in the real world. So yeah, I think it's looking a lot better. And if it took, a situation like the Tanguy and Ndombele transfer to make this kind of come about, then I guess we did get something out of that transfer. So thank you, Tanguy. On the Pink matter, I did see a tweet suggesting that that's how Anne should enter the stadium for every game, on the
I don't disagree.
the wires. So that would be pretty cool.
Not opposed.
Only if
not
it's to
not
that
at all
song.
opposed. That would be awesome. Actually, come into
Yeah.
a Pink song like a trapeze artist. That would be incredible.
Yes.
I would
Well,
totally be
P.S.
down with that.
Before we move on, can we give a shout to Paratici, because he's still lurking about, and I swear to God, that man is the reason why we know all the things that we know.
We can allegedly do that. Yes, we can allegedly do
Yeah.
that.
Allegedly,
I have to
He
laugh
really-
every time I see a picture of him like peeking out of a doorway,
Yes.
in the stadium, and it's like he's been spotted. He's still here.
I feel like he's the perfect embodiment of the Homer Simpson backing into the bushes meme. Like, I'm not
I
here. What do
love
you
that.
mean? That's not me.
I
didn't do
think
that.
he's the guy in the shady figure in the dark in the Simpsons meme. If you know what I'm talking about, like, come here.
Yeah.
Speaking of the shady
What is it
figure in the
about-
dark. Yeah, speaking of the shady figure in the dark, Scott, you've changed locations. You now look like the banker from Deal or No Deal. What do you have to say about this?
Thank you. Now I just don't even remember what you're talking about. Oh, that's hilarious. This
Paratici.
This is
I do not.
off-season potting.
I do
y'all.
not take the deal. I do not take the deal. It's all that I have to say about that.
Fair enough. Do we want to move on to talk about some other deal making? This was an interesting story that I saw this week over at football.london, which was also picked up by, I believe it was sportbusiness.com. Spurs are going to go into this season, and I didn't even pick up on this with the kit announcement with the new home kit coming out, but the online car selling platform Cinch, which has been a sleeve sponsor for Spurs for many years now, is no more. The company has cut short its 5-year deal. They took an exit option and are bailing on it. This was an interesting-ish story to me. The Spurs are also losing Getter as a sponsor for their training gear going into this season. It seems like these companies are simply opting not to spend their money anymore on sponsorship deals. I know that Cinch was also the title sponsor for the Scottish Premiership. They've bailed out of that deal. The Scottish Premiership now has William Hill, the bookmaker, as their title sponsor. So maybe William Hill will be coming to a Spurs shirt near you in the near future. But what's our take on this? I don't really have a big take other than the economy is really, really weird. The global economy is really, really weird and really, really difficult in the years since COVID. And these kinds of things happen. But it is interesting, to say the least, that Spurs no longer will have that little bit of income coming in from shirt sponsorships.
And I don't know. Something tells me that there's a good reason for that, Andrew, in terms of the fact that we're having conversations about Pink concerts lets me know that the 5 million or 10 million a year that they weren't going to get from that company, who, raise your hand if you know what those fucking companies do. Anyway, and I look at it and go, all right, well, that's just open spots that Levy and the team get another year to sell. And they're going to do one more Red Hot Chili Peppers concert or some bullshit like that, and it's paid for.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there could be bigger things in play for sure. Just got to stay away from these large tech-facing organizations at this place in time. As you said, Andrew, with considerations to the economy. Unfortunately, there are industries that are thriving, and more sponsorships amongst that that industry are popping up, right? But yeah, I don't think Spurs are terribly worried about the little bit of cash that we're not going to see from these types of things. I think, $10 million to someone like myself sounds like a heck of a lot of money, but it's pennies for what, the numbers that they play with at Daniel Levy and Mr. Pratici's level, which, by the way, what is it about Spurs that keeps that dude at Spurs? Like, why is he risking his freedom and his career for Tottenham? That's what I want to know more than anything.
He's just going to fade into the bushes. It's not a big deal. He'll be in the bushes just like you're in the shadows. It's fine. It's not Allegedly, of course. We're gonna parse everything with the word allegedly. Todd, it's interesting you brought up. So I did know what Cinch was. It's an online car retailer based in the UK. I was aware of that. I'm not even like no bullshit there. I did not know what Getter was until I just Googled a few minutes ago. Does anyone know what Getter is or where they are based? Caroline, are you aware of this?
Well, I don't know where they're based, but I do know it's kind of like a not errand running service, but you know what I mean, like deliveries and that kind of thing. Like we have like
Yes.
Favor here in Texas that's similar. But
Where's it based out of, Andrew?
I get your
It
point.
is.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a Turkish company.
Turkish. Okay.
Yes, which I was.
Wow.
Oh, you know what? I did see. Oh, sorry, Caroline. Go. Please don't let me cut you off. But no, I was just gonna say that I did see that Getter had recalled all of their international operations to focus
Yes.
100% solely on the Turkish markets.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like the sponsorship market is kind of in a weird place right now because it doesn't seem like you're seeing as many new deals with like sort of what we would think of as legacy companies. You've got, like Scott said, a lot of tech. You have a lot of betting firms, which there's a time limit on how long clubs can benefit from those sponsorships because there's going to be a new rule coming into place. And then you've got really sketchy sports washing kind of situations. So it doesn't feel like it's in a good place. And for that reason, you know, I do think it's a good thing that we have other sources of revenue because you can't really rely on sponsorships for long term these days, it seems like. So yeah.
There was a report from Sky News that Getter actually still owed as much as £5 million in payments to Spurs before leaving their deal at the tail end of last season. So it's like there is money being quote unquote lost here, but I also think that similar to the conversation we were having before regarding Tanguy Ndombele, if you're having Pink concerts, you're having all these different events, it feels like this is the kind of thing you can chalk up to. I know we're talking about millions of pounds of business here, but it feels like a line item to some extent when you're talking about a big club that is raking in the kind of cash that Spurs are right now. So I don't think it's a long-term worry, but it looks like for this season, there won't be a training gear sponsor or a sleeve sponsor. They still have AIA, obviously, which is a big one, but and not one that people are satisfied with purely because of the color that they put on the shirt, but that is what it is. In terms of the money-making opportunities, I feel like Spurs are not in a bad place even with these losses.
Did you mention that we have F1 go-karts at the stadium yet? Because we have F1 go-karts at the stadium, Andrew.
I've heard that. I have heard that is a thing. There's a skywalk too, which you and I know very well. We experienced last year.
What? No, man. Listen, what's funny is that the only reason why we're even having this conversation is because we went from a neighborhood club to a global brand. And it's happened over the course that we become fans, the course of time that we become fans, right? So since Levy took over, you could basically say this is what they've been able to do. And they built on the history and the success and the legacy of this club. And they built on the fact that the area of Tottenham, which we also know very well, is ripe for gentrification, if we're going to call it what it is. They took a real solid swinging opportunity to turn Tottenham into a global sporting entity that far surpasses, the time that you go to football down the lane. So,
yeah, it's a different world for sure, and obviously with Spurs' growth, it is a weird balancing act that they are trying to pull in terms of their place in not only the global football marketplace, but specifically the English football marketplace. And it's something that the business side is going to have to match with the football side. And it's something that we've been kind of, we've batted that topic around a lot especially over the last handful of years since the stadium was built. And it's going to be something that we continue to kind of monitor. But I don't know. It's an interesting topic to me, to say the least. It's not something that I'm super duper well versed in, just because I'm not an economist and I'm certainly not a UK economist. But it is interesting in the sense that it's the off season and these are the things that we have to discuss. We have to discuss the ways that the club is continuing to operate and grow and be a global brand. I think the AIA point that you made, Todd, is a really important one, because that has really increased. And I think you might have made this in our pre-show chat. The AIA part has really grown Spurs' ability to show growth in the Asian markets. And obviously Heung-min Son is a big part of that as well. But that's why they do preseason trips to Asia. That's why they do what they do. And that has obviously been, I know people harp on the fact that it's red on a white shirt, which we don't want, but that has been a big partner for the club for many years now. And these other partnerships, like, who knows, in another world, Cinch or Getter could have been a future front of shirt sponsorship. It just didn't work out this way. So we'll have to see kind of where the next one comes down the line.
No, you made the solid point. For those who are unaware, obviously, there's cultural reasons why AIA on a red on a white shirt will always be red on a white shirt. Has to do with good luck in the Chinese culture, and that's just it's written into the contract with Spurs that's the way that it will appear. On a white shirt will always be red. On the off-color shirts, it can be the white, that's fine, or the other colors, but on a white shirt, it will always be red. And so I think that many fans struggle with that in terms of, like, there's very much still, even to this day, Andrew, a lot of never red contingent out there that, we got to show respect to. And I get their point. It'd be a hell of a lot nicer looking if it was blue, but we are where we are. That in mind, I think that Levy is so brilliant in his own way. They're going to study him when this is all over from a business standpoint, because he's brilliant. Most of the time, these large now corporations, basically, that are running football clubs, will have a new stadium built, and they will, before the stadium's even complete, they'll sell the sponsorship for the title sponsorship for the stadium. And Daniel Levy realized that it was more valuable to the brand of Tottenham Hotspur to hold on to the naming rights and keep it named as the stadium, and build Tottenham Hotspur as the brand, because there's only one Tottenham Hotspur.
I'm so glad you said that, Todd. I can't tell you how many people I speak to who are just Americans who aren't big soccer fans, who are big NFL fans, because let's be honest, the NFL is king in the United States. It's the biggest sport. It will remain the biggest sport, likely at least for the next 10 to 15 years. And I speak to people all the time who I tell them, oh yeah, I post a podcast. It's about Tottenham Hotspur. They're a club over in London. And they say, oh yeah, isn't that where they play the NFL games? And that immediate connection comes to their brain, and they get it. They immediately, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you said Tottenham Hotspur to someone in the States, just a general NFL fan, they wouldn't have known Tottenham Hotspur was a soccer club, much less a soccer club based in London. But if you told them Manchester United, if you told them Liverpool, if you told them Arsenal, if you told them Chelsea, they would know those names. Not a lot of people would have known the name Tottenham Hotspur, but just that alone, that the stadium point, because they play the NFL games there, and because on the NFL bottom line tickers, it says that game's being played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that makes Spurs much more well known. So that's a really good point, Todd.
Do you know of anyone who's decided to start supporting Tottenham because of the NFL connection? Just curious.
Personally, no, I can't say that, but I don't think that the point you're trying to make there is a good one. And I think it's also, it's not even about supporting the club. It's about an awareness of the club in some respect from a global marketing standpoint.
And also from the NFL side, Levy's not trying to convert those people to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club fans. He's trying to convert those people to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium experience fans. And he wants them to come back whenever the NFL product is there, which they're in the catbird seat for the NFL expansion to London. And that's ultimately what Levy is. That is the play for Levy and Enoch, is ride this out until the NFL comes to London, and then your immediate valuation jumps up by at least $2 billion, if not more.
And he wants the Pink fan that lives in, you know, that lives in Kentucky to say, oh, Pink's playing in London this summer. Let's go see Pink play in London. It's at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium where they have the NFL games. Like that's
I think
that's
more
the kind
so
of
like
attraction.
I think more so like everybody knows the O2 Arena, right? In England. I think he's trying to do that with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the sense that like it is the spot in London for these major concert events, these major fight events. Like it is overtaken Wembley in some respects because of the amenities and the way that it's built and how fucking awesome it is. Like there's a reason why it wins a bunch of awards. It's genuinely kick-ass. And as we're going through all of these things, and they're there for the Pink and Rihanna's and fucking Tyson Fury fights. Oh, yeah, there's a cock roll up in the corner every single time. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll take that from my football club. Well done, Daniel.
Dude, and we also, you know, I'm not gonna make the argument that a rugby fan isn't more associated and aligned to soccer than the NFL fan is, because a rugby fan certainly probably has a team and all of that, right? But the rugby poll, as an American, we maybe overlook it, but it's huge, and it's such a massive sport across the rest of the world outside of the U.S., right? And they host every major rugby event at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as well these days, right? If it's in the U.K. So, yeah, I really don't think there's a single pull in terms of just massive behemoth industries, right, that are conceivable, you know, when it comes to being able to partner and align to them, that Levy hasn't gone after and secured, right? So it's very impressive.
Yeah, and on the concert point, I will just say it would have been nice had one certain concert been there this summer, but it is at Wembley and was at Liverpool this weekend, and that's of course the massive Taylor Swift tour. Like that would be cool, but like that's a Wembley show. There is still
going to that if it was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Would you be there?
I would have made a hell of an attempt. I can tell you that. Yeah, for sure. I saw that tour on the second show that would have been going back more than a year ago now here in Arizona. But yeah, I would have made an effort. But that's the thing too. I can share this being in that kind of world. Like people are planning summer trips to Europe to go see shows, like not just the Taylor Swift, the Eras tour, other concerts. They make trips out of it. I know people who have gone over to see shows in France or in Germany or in Scotland. Like it's happened a lot this summer already. And if that kind of show was happening at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it's another feather in the cap. That's a Wembley show though. That's like I said, that was an Anfield show this past week. So there is competition there, and that's a good thing. Like I actually was unaware that Pink was playing the stadium until I saw all the photos popping up this week, and I think that's fucking rad. Not just because I think Pink is rad, but like it's awesome that there are concerts being held there this summer. I want all the events there, all the revenue, because that's how you run a business. Frankly, that's how.
And turn that directly into that kid with multiple K's in his name from Georgia, who I can't pronounce, who plays for Napoli, and bring his ass to Tottenham Hotspur. We got a number 77 jersey that's hanging right in the kit room. I've seen it, and I promise you, we'll figure out a way to fit all the letters of your name on it. Come on.
See, because we've been talking about American football, my mind went to Georgia in the U.S. And I'm like, what kid are you talking about? Like, how have I not heard about this American wonderkind, you know?
One of them Georgia Bulldogs? Is that who it is? No.
Scott, say the guy's name.
Oh, Kvaratskhelia.
Thank you.
Kvaratskhelia. It's a tough one. It took me a full year to learn how to pronounce. Dude, you're asking for a lot, bud.
I said what I said. Like, this is a tough situation here, man. I'm pulling out all the stops.
I couldn't have.
I'm not even going to try. So. It took me, like I said, a full calendar year to get the last name down. It's a cool last name too. No disrespect, Kvaratskhelia. Yeah, but honestly, like I said off air, either we signed him or I'm just screaming Levy out every day on Twitter. There's no other option.
I'll throw another allegedly in there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do that thing where you like line up all your tweets so the AI just sends them out. I'll do it for a whole year, just every single day, Levy out. Get it done, Kvaratskhelia. There's no other option.
Well, Andrew, I know this isn't a transfer show, obviously, but like, we hear Jed Spence to Genoa is actually something that's going to materialize. And, there's been a formal offer, which if we turn any sort of a profit on that guy, it's going to be a glorious day for Daniel Levy, who basically bought him because he lost in a poker game to the owner of Nottingham Forest or whatever. But I allegedly, I swear, I think Kvaratskhelia and an Eze goes a long way to addressing our needs on the offensive side of the ball. How do you feel about that?
I think that the transfer window is open, and any transfer news that comes down the pike, I will welcome with open arms. But I also know that there are two massive tournaments going on. One has started, one starts this week, and then Olympics come after that. And I just know that there's going to be a lot of complicating factors for all transfers this summer, but the window is open. I do know that.
I didn't know you could dance that well, Andrew.
Hey man, I'm dancing on the head of a pin over here because I you know me, man. Transfers, it's like
your favorite. I completely understand. All the listeners know how much you love it. I get that.
Let me say this about transfers before we move on. I am glad that there are way more outgoing links than there are incoming links at this point of the transfer quote unquote season, because I do think we talked about it last week with all the departures that were announced between Sessegnon and obviously Dyer and Perisic, and I'm forgetting the other name that was brought up last week that was an official departure, and then the news this week of Ndombele. Like, I do want the clear out season to continue before the incoming season does, just because I think that's very important for this club to continue to. You gotta flush your system before you start putting new ingredients in. You know what I'm saying? And I feel that that's really important for the club to keep doing.
So say more. What additional flushing would you like to see moved about, or are you saying that you're just going to stay kind of treading water as it stands right now until after these tournaments start folding that?
I'll agree to both of those statements, but you brought up a name like Jed Spence. I think having outgoing connections there is very good. I know there are outgoing connections with Joe Rodon right now. By the way, Jaffa Tanganga was the other name that I was forgetting a moment ago. His departure, like all of these types of names, Joe Rodon has been linked with Ipswich this week by Alistair Gold. Like, there are a lot of these types of names that I just think need to continue to flow outward. And if it comes down to, we start getting links with some of these players who are going to be involved in tournaments such as Giovanni Lo Celso, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. If those links start to come down, like, let's talk about it. Let's address them when they come. I'm prepared for it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the outgoing season to continue, at least for the next few weeks here, before we start talking about serious incomings, because we all know it's going to be delayed by all the international football being played. So I am not pounding on the table saying we need to get guys in. We've got a preseason coming. I'm not going to be that person as of yet. Like, give me at least another month before I start feeling any kind of pressure for this club to get in new players.
That's fair enough. I just want to be healthy when this is all said and done.
Oh, and that's 100%.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like, Højbjerg is going to play a lot of games in this tournament. And there's concern there. Cuti Romero's health coming back from a big Copa America tournament in the heat out here is not going to be, as I'm looking around, man, and this happens every tournament year. You look at it and you go, what's the probability of somebody getting hurt? Okay, it's really fucking high. Who's it going to be? All right, who can we afford to lose? Please, God. That's why, dude, and I wasn't on the pod, so I didn't get a chance to say this, but that's why I'm so happy. I'm so happy that James Madison is at home. I'm so happy. Like a pissed off James Madison rehabbing 6 weeks before his friends. Like, oh my days. And the guy who took his spot, it doesn't even matter who it was in Gareth Southgate's mind, just as bulletin board material for James Madison, who has that little chip on his shoulder already. That's my early pick for who's gonna bust out this year for us is James Madison. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped about that too. If I'm being completely honest with you, you just brought up the heat of the Copa. I know that the Euros are being held in Germany. I truly don't know. Is the Copa here in the United States? I don't even know. This is not something I've even looked into.
Dude,
it is here in the US.
Kansas City in July. I think there's a Tucson or not a Tucson, a Glendale show, or a
Is
Glendale.
there really? Right up the street. I didn't even know. So fair enough. I was unaware of that. I do want to touch on Euros here.
Oof.
Yeah, I haven't even looked. I know the US plays its first game a week from today, which I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit here on the pod when the time comes. But
who's it against? Do you know?
Couldn't tell you.
Bolivia?
Maybe Paraguay. I do have Bolivia. There you go. That sounds right.
It's Bolivia.
But yeah, it's not even hasn't even been on my radar. That's how
it is Bolivia.
Bolivia. There you go. So we'll see. Before we talk a little Euros, I do want to bring up what happened this week with Rodrigo Bentancur and Heung-min Son, because it was kind of awkward and not great. Rodrigo Bentancur was quoted. He is obviously a part of Uruguay's Copa America team. Speaking of the Copa, was appearing on a television show earlier this week and was asked, a lot of this was lost in translation, but was asked something about Heung-min Son and made a less than stellar joke about basically about Asian people all looking the same. Just a blatantly racist joke that he made and kind of laughed it off. To, I guess, Bentancur's credit, even though I don't want to really give him a lot of credit, he did pretty much immediately apologize, issued an apology to Sonny on Instagram, and wrote that he apologized for what happened, said it was a very bad joke, said he would never disrespect or hurt him or anyone else, sending his well wishes to Sonny and saying he loved him. I didn't really know what to make of this story when I first read it. I saw a lot of people admonishing Rodrigo Bentancur and then kind of found out why. And I was like, that's weird. It doesn't seem like his personality. It doesn't seem like everything we know about Rodrigo Bentancur. But it also is just bad. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. This was a bad joke. It was not funny. It was racist. I don't want to hear about cultural differences and those kinds of things from folks. You can, miss me in the comments about all of that. But where are we at with this, guys? I would love for this to not be a story anymore after this. I would love for it to just be, yeah, this was a bad blip on the radar and there was an apology made, and hopefully that can be that. Do we think it's going to go away that quickly, Caroline, or is this something that has the potential to linger? I hope it doesn't, but where are you at?
Well, something we have to think about is that there's a very real chance that Bentancur could be fined or, otherwise punished by the FA, because, when I heard about this, my mind immediately went to the incident with Delhi during the pandemic, for which he did get fined. And once again, I think what's really sad about it to me is that it did involve his teammate and his captain. And I just hate that Son has to deal with things like this. And he's been vocal himself about the racism that he's faced. And then to experience it from a teammate, I think is just really, really shitty. And I agree with you, Andrew. I don't think it's okay to try to dismiss it by saying that it's just a cultural difference. I know that we saw a similar kind of argument made when Cavani, who was also fined by the FA, by the way, made a very, racist remark. I just don't think that excuse cuts it, because to me, cultural differences are things like the food that we eat, the way that we dress. It's not being dehumanizing towards an entire group of people or an entire gender, whatever it may be. So yeah, that doesn't really carry any water with me. And I just hope to see some sort of legitimate response from the club. I think it's strange that they have been completely silent. And I don't know. I'm sure we will hear something from Sun as well. It's, like I said, just a very unfortunate and unfair situation for him to be in, but I can't imagine that he won't respond in some way. And knowing him, it will be very forgiving, because I think that's the kind of person that he is. But yeah, just this whole situation is just very sad to me at the end of the day.
It's a total own goal, right, Todd? I mean, that's the other thing. It's one of those things that just doesn't need to happen, but for some reason did, and obviously it's bad. TC, I think you're muted.
I am. Thank you. No, it is an own goal, man. It's absolutely an unforced error, and it's tough to see. When you watch the clip, which I did, and you watch the interaction between him and the host, it was said in a very quippy way, and he kept it moving and kind of laughed and joked. It wasn't something where it was a big punchline. It wasn't premeditated. He said it offhandedly and came out and apologized accordingly. But there's no place for it, man. And it's tough. And I think Caroline made the best point possible, which is it just puts Sonny in a really shitty position. So.
And we've seen Sonny react to other things. Oh yeah, go ahead, Caroline.
Just in terms of like the apology that Rodrigo made, I appreciate that he did make it addressed to Sun. However, I think he also owes a lot of the fans of our team an apology, particularly the Asian fans who will have felt, implicated by this and, deeply offended. So to me, it was disappointing that was not, a part of his apology. And I think it needs to be, in a follow-up. Like there's got to be education going on here too. And I think that's something I've been thinking about. The Premier League has all of these, anti-racism initiatives, and it's just unclear what good any of them are doing. Because, this is not the only time we've seen an incident like this. So I just think they really need to think about the way that they're actually going about, that education with players, because it's clearly not working.
Well, and I think the other point that you made before about the club needing to step up and do something as well. And when I say step up and do something, I'm not talking about any kind of punishment but just a public admonishment of this is not right, and we've addressed it internally. Like something of that sort is what I would want to see from the club, because to your point, and to the point that we made earlier, the club has done a great job in building a global brand and building not only a global brand globally, but a global brand in Asia. We talked earlier about, the partnership with AIA and all of the trips that the club makes constantly, preseason trip coming up. Like, how about a little something? And I would imagine that will come this week. And if it doesn't come this week, I will be on this microphone next week saying, why didn't it come this week? And like I said, it doesn't need to be some grand thing. It just needs to be a statement of, we're aware of what happened and we've addressed it internally. I'd be fine with something as simple as that. But I do think it needs to be addressed, just because these are two members of your club, of your organization, that this incident is between, and that can't stand.
Yeah, it's just about taking responsibility. And, I don't want to deflect too much from the fact that this was a case of, racism, to talk about something else. However, I do think, there have been times in the past where, for example, the comments that Hugo Lloris made during the World Cup that came off extremely homophobic, like that was hurtful to me personally. And it upset me a little bit that the club never, addressed that. And I just think fans, we do have a long memory. when it comes to things like this, and the club needs to think about that.
Well, the club has a long-standing kind of general policy of not saying shit unless they're absolutely forced to. Think about all the fucking think about all the fucking nonsense that Lucas Moura spewed about.
Exactly. Yes.
And nobody said a God blessed word, right? You say the thing about Hugo, I completely forgot about that, but I didn't forget about all the times that Lucas Moura talked about all sorts of different things that were not good for anybody, right? Like, and you can't put a brand behind that. And I don't know, man. It's the club supposedly is like, isn't Donna Cohen like a PR wizard or whatever? Technically, like that's like
again, I'll use the word allegedly.
Allegedly, right? But I mean, we have a long-standing. It's the same way that I feel about our medical staff. We have a long-standing history of underperforming in the PR department, and the same people, just like in the medical department. You know who I'm talking to. The same people have been in charge for forever, and we've got a laundry list of amazing, incredible talents that go to die in the Tottenham training room. But anyway, getting back to the point, our PR has been abhorrent forever, and I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
Well, and it's unfortunate because the club does do a lot of good work. Like, I do think we should acknowledge that, especially when it comes to the things that they do within the local community, the school that's part of the stadium, even environmentally, I feel like we've in some ways, led the Premier League in that aspect. So but it's got to be the whole package for me. Like, you
don't get to Ole the hard things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the only difference between this particular, I guess the word would be incident, and things involving previous players like Lucas Moura, Hugo Lloris, is that those were more personal beliefs that we would come to disagree with, whereas this is an incident between two different current members of the team, and that's where I feel like the club has to step up and say something for some reason. For some reason, there's a difference there to me, and not to diminish what they probably should have and could have done with the previous things that we're discussing. But with this, you're talking about your captain, number one. And that's where I kind of want to focus this as well, is that Sonny has dealt with so much, not just with racism, but just incidents that guy has had to go through in his career. And it's just not great, and you want to lift that guy up as much as you can because he's the face of your organization, and when he's having to constantly field questions about racism, that's not ideal. You want to remove that stuff, and when it's coming from inside the house, that's where it's not a great look. So I will hope and pray that the club says something. Even, like I said, it doesn't have to be much. It could be the bare minimum, but I think the bare minimum is required here, and they need to say something because people are talking and the streets are talking, and it's not a good thing. So let's end this on a slightly cheerier note, I guess, and talk about some actual football that happened this week. We had Euros matches getting underway. England was a winner today over Serbia, although I know no English fan will be happy with that performance. Caroline, I know your German side was victorious in the first match of the Euros. Some interesting games. I thought some of these games were, honestly, I thought the England game today was the least entertaining of all the games that I've seen thus far. There have been plenty of goals scored. We saw a really interesting match between Italy and Albania, which Italy came on top in the quickest goal ever scored by Albania in a Euro competition.
There's a banger,
Denmark. It was, and I think Denmark will be a little disappointed to only come away with a draw, a 1-1 against Slovenia. So, Todd? What's your kind of overarching? We've only had a couple of days of results thus far, but what's your kind of overarching thought about the first few matches that you've seen in the Euros so far?
Yeah. First off, I want to give a shout out to Scott, who looked at Hungary and said, that's the team and their unbeaten streak that I'm going to be riding into second place in his group. And they did not show up in the way that he was hoping they were going to in that first match. But No, for me, and I said this at the beginning, like everything's kind of sorting out in the way that you would imagine that it would. In my opinion, you said, maybe one or two exceptions, but as I'm looking at it, like, the same old favorites are looking sharp, right? There's a silly defensive nonsense aside, you look at the score line for the Scotland-Germany game, Kaz, and you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds about right. That tracks. It's the same sort of thing as you look up and down. Oh yeah, okay. Italy came back and beat Albania after a banger. Sure, absolutely. And if you saw the goals that the Italians scored, they look like some very Italian goals. But I'm actually pretty worried when they go up against a side that's better than fucking Albania, because it looks like the wheels fell off for the Italians in the second half of that match. That's one. The second half, the second thing that I would say is that the Christian Eriksen goal scored by Denmark today was some fox in the box business. It reminded me some OG number 23, and I teared up a little bit. It was absolutely glorious. Shout out to my boys from Denmark. I think they're going to have a decent tournament this year. I've got semis for them, which is aspirational, but I think they actually look pretty decent. It's Kasper Schmeichel's last hurrah, I believe. It looks that way. God, I hope they don't face England, because we all know how Harry Kane loves to absolutely clown nose our boy Kasper. But anyhow,
I hate to break it to you, Todd. Guess what the next match is for Denmark and England.
I'm just
it's against one another.
I'm just saying, when you get to the knockouts,
yeah, that comes up Thursday though in the group, which will be fun.
You mark this down, and Andrew, you and I will talk offline for different reasons. Harry Kane scores in this game against Denmark. Like, I'm just telling you right now.
Yes, we will be checking what some particular odds makers have to say about that. Yes, we will be doing that.
100%. So that aside, brother, watching a Gareth Southgate coached England side, it's like watching someone drive a Ferrari that doesn't know how to drive stick. It was so brutal. Poor Phil Foden, like a chicken with his fucking head cut off. Oh my days. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is, cross after cross after cross. That's fine. You want somebody to spam crosses, that's your guy. Okay. But to call him a defensive liability is a respectful term, because he's woeful.
Yeah, Gareth Southgate coaching England could also make me want to produce the Homer Simpson fading into the bushes meme as well. Like that's very much where I'm at with that. But Caroline, I know you're going to be happy about your German side. What are your other takeaways from the first few days of Euro 2024?
I think I'm feeling better about Germany than I was coming into the tournament. I think I needed to see some proof that we could actually string some goals together. And we only had one very disappointing, defensive just debacle, which you can usually count on lately. But I think you're right. Like, there weren't too many surprises in this first few games. Hungary losing was a little surprising to me, but now that I'm actually looking at their squad, I'm like, I don't know. I think they may have missed their moment. It's a bit of an aging roster. And then, it was sad to me to see Croatia do quite that poorly. Because I have a bit of a soft spot for Croatia just because of, the Spurs connections there. And otherwise, Denmark is really the only team that I think could be kind of also disappointed about their first result. The other ones were kind of expected. And Todd, I'm surprised you did not roll up in your Denmark kit today. That's the other big surprise of the group stage so far.
It's fair enough. It's 97 degrees here. And
okay, that's fair.
So we're good. We got good vibes. We're in good vibes today. So
I want to see how France does tomorrow, because I think they're the biggest threat that I'm worried about from a German fan perspective.
Well, going forward, that makes total sense. But at the back, like, I don't know, Cass. What do you think about that France side defensively?
I would have to look and see who even is in their defense because, to be quite honest, I do not know.
Well, and
But
that's the
it's
whole
the
thing
attack.
is
It's the attack that worries me.
well,
It's
for sure, as it does. I mean, they're lethal. But I mean, that's the only point that I wanted to make about that France side is that you used to be able to look back at the French side and you knew
yeah.
before you even said France, like you were going to have your Varanes and your Hugo Llorises, and like I mean, there were stalwarts of that squad that just aren't there anymore. And so,
and they do
yes,
have Upamecano, who, as a Bayern fan, I do not rely on him. So you might have a point there.
France, of course, play is it Austria in their first match tomorrow, but then they also have the Netherlands on Friday, which is the Netherlands for me are I gave this out on a show I did last week, like long shotty, dark horsey type. I don't think they can score with France by any stretch, but if they could muck it up, that's a fun match that's coming up this week. Netherlands, France on Friday. And then Thursday, I mentioned it, Denmark, England. We also get Spain, Italy that day, which is really cool. The Copa also kicking off later this week. As we mentioned, Argentina face Canada on Thursday. Lots of fun matches in the Copa as well. We get the U.S. making their Copa debut on Sunday against Bolivia. So there will be plenty to discuss, even when the Spurs news only trickles in the coming weeks here at the Tottenham Depot. That is the positive. We'll also have a calendar to look forward to next week, as Premier League fixtures will be announced this Tuesday morning, England time. So by the time we wake up here in the States, they will likely be out, and we will be able to perhaps plan another Depot getaway for the spring, considering there will be European football as well as Premier League football coming. So that's exciting. And yeah, the transfer business will trickle, and we will be here to cover it here on the Depot. But it will trickle because of these international tournaments, and we'll just kind of have to grin and bear it as it does. But we'll chat about the matches in kind of a wrap up fashion as the tournaments move along this summer. That's about all I got, unless you guys got anything else to throw out here before we move to wrap. Sounds good. I like the nods of approval. That is going to do it for this week here on the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on YouTube at youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. We are posting everything up there. You can, if you heard us joking earlier about Scott looking like the dealer from or the banker from Deal or No Deal, you can check it out on YouTube. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice as well. It really does help spread the word about the show. And once again, follow us on the socials at Tottenham Depot. For Scott at DSM Spurs, Caroline at CG Stefko, Todd at TC_Kasho. I can be found at A Stetka. And once again, follow us at Tottenham Depot on all your social media platforms. Till next week, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.